Good afternoon. My name is Erica with Redeeming Thunder, and I am here to give you a prophetic word that is wonderful because it comes with redeeming deliverance. And the prophetic word given while in prostration, I felt the need to pray. I haven't been able to do my usual shower time prostration due to breaking my pinky toe a few weeks ago, and I can't be bending my toes, you know, to get down or anything. So yeah, I broke my toe running out of the bathroom and trying to close the door behind me at the same time, and it was sort of dark, and I just ran right through I guess my foot hitting the framing. So anyway, well, in prayer I received the word maggâl, casi, and it's age 38, I believe, and it references Joel 3:13, and that magal word stands for sickle. It's a certain hand tool to cut harvest, and it also means birth, offspring, in consideration of birthing. So I know that this is a word for the birthing season. Is an appointed time, and it's actually we're in harvest. We are nearing the vine harvest, and have you noticed that when there is what I'm noticing anyway, and when there's a harvest on the earth, there's a harvest in heaven. So on earth as it is in heaven, you know that verse? And so there's another harvest going on, and that verse in particular is very it's good news. And I had not researched the word yet until afterwards, but I'll tell you that what that verse stands for in a second. I went to sleep and I had this dream, and the dream took me back to a time when I was a child, and that initiated because when I was a child at a preschool, okay, and that had me recall something traumatic. So this word is for those who are in the need of deliverance for things that we shoved back into the subconscious and not really realizing that it has been a hindering. And right now, due to this wonderful scripture that's going to take place, we need to heal from these past traumas so that way we can reap the harvest. So the verse states something along the lines like that you strike the sickle to because it is time for harvest, and it's going to be like an overflow. I will put it in the description. So it's a really wonderful verse, and I find it kind of ironic, like how could we talk about overflow and abundance when I'm trying to deal with deliverance, and I'm talking about this severe trauma that occurred that I will tell you in a second. It'll be like, how is that matched with one another? heals from trauma, you are then ready to birth what Yahuwah has for you in his plans, in your assignments. Maybe it's a business, maybe it's a marriage, maybe it's a child, maybe it's several businesses all at once that are getting ready to birth. Maybe it's becoming king status, queen status. Maybe it's finally birthing in the promise, the prodigal's return. Maybe it's the promise of owning property and launching that. So I don't know which one is yours. I know I have some ideas of what could be mine, but everybody is going through, either they're in the wilderness, or they're in the birthing season, or they're in the new mantles of the birthing season. And so you need to pray and ask Yahuwah, in what stage are you at? All right, so going back to the childhood trauma, and you'll see what I mean with the childhood trauma. Okay, so my sister and I had been going to this preschool that my parents put us to, in which which my parents enrolled us at, and you wouldn't think anything bad of it because this was a Christian, establishment, and we're Christian all our lives. So, but now to this day, I'm Judeo-Christian, which I'm noticing that a lot of Jewish, Orthodox Jewish do not accept Judeo-Christians and or Christians. So I find that a little kind of contradicting to Yahuwah's word, because he's here to save the Gentiles and the Jewish. Now, I do have Jewish blood. I'm not going to say what percentage it is. It could be 95. It could be 50%. It could be 1%. It doesn't really matter, but I don't find that it matters. I'm not trying to be having Jewish blood. I know that it's in my family. I know because of the stories that my parents have, that my mom has shared, but I know with the prophetic word that with the Yahuwah has told me that it's in our bloodline. But that's on a separate video. I just wanted to note that down, is that maybe those who are watching this word and who are Jewish and feel, I get the comments that say, that want to know what tribe am I, and what or they start to state comments like that are very self-centered and not of scripture, stating that only the Jewish ones are saved. I don't even believe that, and then I have to give them a series of verses to contradict what their statements were. And I'm just saying, if you're watching this, Yahuwah is bringing you to this channel to help bring some revelation that he came to save both Gentile and Jewish people. And this word is definitely for those who, you could be Jewish or Gentile, and you could have had a traumatic childhood, okay? And so another verse in Jeremiah with the word magal means, it states something along the lines that the parents who the offspring come from weren't coming from Jewish origins, or they like a Hittite married an Amorite, and so it was encouraged not to marry out of your tribe, so that way it doesn't continue that cycle of not becoming a believer of Yahuwah. Okay? And it's like, how insulting. How could it be where you're calling me now Christian if I went to church all my life and I was Christian? Well, I'm just saying with the prophetic word and the verses that come with that word. I'm just sharing. I'm here as the messenger sharing what Yahuwah was stating to me. Okay? Maybe we did consider ourselves as Christian because we were raised that way. Your upbringing was going to the church and being in the church. But it doesn't mean that just because you go to church that you are truly a follower. You got to be obedient, not just love God. You got to obey His law. So maybe that's why He's stating that, or He's giving insight for the future for anybody who is thinking of marrying. Make sure you marry someone that's within the tribe. And we're not saying marry a cousin. Back in the day, they married cousins. Let's not take it to the extreme. But it was giving the example of Abraham looking for a wife for Isaac, his son. And he wanted someone that was for sure a true believer of Yahuwah. And so he needed someone that he trusted. And he trusted one of his servants to travel and look for a wife for Isaac. So, and he found one. Okay, and he asked specifically of a clue, and Yahuwah gave him the clue. So, okay, so the other word was casi, so that means reflection of Yahuwah, and it also means silvery of the silver of the treasure of heaven, and now being dispersed. And that makes so much sense with the maggâl prophetic word that has something to do with striking the sickle to the harvest, because it's ripe and ready. It's going to be full of abundance. So it makes sense. Okay? But what didn't make sense to me is the trauma until later I understood. Okay, so the dramatic, and I'm bringing this up, and I feel it is a vulnerable story. Okay, it is very much a traumatic event that children should not have to endure. And it may be something similar, happened to you, and that's why Yahuwah wants me to bring it up. Anyway, so in the morning I had this dream, right? The next morning after this word, and I didn't understand what he meant, like, was he saying my parents? He's talking about my parents particularly, or other parents? I'm still kind of trying to figure out, but getting to the point about the dream, it was something along the lines of me being back as a child and in that preschool. So then I woke up and I started thinking about the preschool, and it looks, it was a regular classroom. There was a playground, and you would think it was nothing of it. But I recall my sister and I have a twin sister, if you guys didn't know. And sometimes it's just, twins can share, like silent telepathy talking, right? Okay, but besides that, sometimes twins can share the same dream. And we had the same dream. We didn't really understand it, but the dream was this man that was not dressed at all. We didn't see any genitals at all, in that dream, but it was around the age of 3 to 5, and we kept telling our mother, I have this weird dream. I have this dream where this man is laying down, and we're hitting its body, and the limbs are falling off. And I find, and then we start. Someone starts cheering us on, and so because they're cheering us on, we start to be like, maybe this is something that's supposed to be funny. But it seemed like it was some type of man doll, and it was just snapping limbs as soon as we just tapped it. So then they kept encouraging us to hit it and tap this person. And that was the dream. Okay, but that's not the psychotic episode that was going on. The other thing was that there was a teacher that we had, and she was there at the beginning, but then they had all these other assistants there, and you know, color time, nap time, we're eating snacks. But I recall them doing a lot of like ridicule comments. My mom would dress us up in these matching frilly outfits, you know, with the frilly underwear that goes on top of the other regular underwear to make the outfit look even cuter and more precious looking. Anyways, they would always make fun of us and tell us how stupid we look, etc., etc. We'd tell our parents that, and they wouldn't really do anything. Anyway, kept going to that school. And then there was a time where, many times actually, you know, speaking up, not really abiding by their rules, you know, not coloring how they wanted me to color. You know, these doesn't sound like a grand issue, right? It's not even that. They would punish, a drastic punishment, and take my sister and I, sometimes by ourselves even, and put us in this closet. And they would leave us there. And this closet had brown doors, and it had a couple steps, so like maybe 5 steps up, and then a landing, and then another stairs that of 5 or 6 steps going up into another room. So it was a closet hallway type of setting. And at the bottom where the landing was at was some shutters. And the shutters opened up into a basement-like setting. And it opened into a basement, which then that's where I saw my teacher, preschool teacher. And I recall being there for hours, and I felt very claustrophobic. So this is a specific deliverance from claustrophobia. And now I know why I had been claustrophobic for the majority of my life. Now I understand why. And it had to do with being trapped in this closet-like place. In a place where you were supposed to feel safe. And the reason why I know, you know, the verse in Jeremiah was talking about the Hittites and the Amorites. When you go into the commentary, that's where it really brought it home. What I understood is that it was talking about these parents that got together, having offspring. Okay, and then Yahuwah goes on and on about stating they did not swaddle the baby. They did not rub the body with salt. And they did not care for the baby in this other type of unusual way that maybe we've never heard before. But it was these Jewish customs, okay? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure they swaddled the baby, or us. I'm pretty sure they took care of us, okay? That's what, he's not getting to that, to those basic needs. He's saying, did you really take care of the children when you were, did you really take care of their emotional health, their mental health, their physical space? Did you really do that? Because he thinks that certain families did not do what they were supposed to be doing to totally, ultimately protect the child, the baby, their offspring. And let me tell you what happened later. Okay, so now going back to actual real life, but memories now. I recall seeing the teacher and some other guy come in and out, and My sister and I are being very quiet, and the thing is that she looks over and she smiles, and she knows that we're in there. She knows that little kids are sitting there and watching. And I look further back behind where she's at, and there's these really tall, like if we're in some kind of basement, that's what it looks like, okay? And there's these, like it's taking me many years, several decades, okay, to figure out what really happened in my childhood and why. And I right now is the time where Yahuwah wants me to heal from, and He has delivered me from that claustrophobia, which many feel like they'll never heal from. You need to dig deep into your childhood, and you need to give it to Yahuwah so He can do it. And because I had not been digging it on my own, He brought it to my attention that we are in elevation mode, we are in birthing mode, and all of these other issues have to come out of hiding, and they've got to be healed. So anyways, back in the shelves there are a bunch of like ancient dolls that look creepy, like incredibly antique looking. Just think of creepy dolls or creepy puppets. Just think of that, and that's what was there. I don't know if they were cursed items. I don't know, but you know, there was another time where there was a man literally laying on a table, and she was standing right over him. And my sister and I were frightened. We didn't know what was going on, and we don't know why we were stuck in that closet all the time. And we call our parents, they put us in a closet, and they would not listen to us. So that's why I want you to listen to your children. If they're at a babysitter's, listen to them and take them out of there. My gosh, please. Listen to them. They're not making it up. They're saying the most absurd thing, and it really was happening. So anyways, and she would be like hitting his arm or hitting his leg, and or like, I don't know if she was sawing it off, or it looks like she was doing something, and that limb would come off. So it makes total sense now why my sister and I later on would keep having dreams of this man laying there and just bonking his leg, and it would come off. It would make sense now why we would have that dream. We have some association to a real life, creepy, satanic, occult-like scenario. And it seemed like this is what I got out of it. They needed power in order to do that ritual that they were doing in that preschool. They needed power, and the way they got the most power was the fear and anxiety of a child. So they needed the children to realize and open the shutters to release that type of virtue, to release that type of weird, unnecessary emotions for someone else to use and provoke and abuse it. Okay? And then I thought of that, and I was like, yeah, that was really traumatizing. I would think of it throughout my years, you know, but I tell my mom, and she's just like, and doesn't really say anything. Like, well, you didn't go over there anymore. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't want to go there for a long time. And I recall it would be choir performance, and we'd have to wear an angel outfit, and I just felt so nervous when I was a little girl. Okay? And not putting two and two together, that I'm so nervous to stand on the bleachers, because the bleachers are right next to that stage, and underneath that stage is where the basement was and where all of that was going on. And I didn't want to perform, and I felt so nervous. I thought, all this time I have stage fright. All this time I don't like being in front of crowds. All this time I don't like giving speeches, and it has all rooted because of those crazy satanic occult like practices, and what they submitted us to do, to be and present and watch. What they did to innocent children. I don't know if they did it to any other child, child there, but I think that preschool has closed down by now. My husband tried to look it up. I told him about this because what happened is I started to think, well, thank Yahuwah that they took us out finally. And then I was like, I recall that they took us to my grandmother's house to be taken care of. And I didn't cry yet. I've never cried about what happened to us in that preschool. I've never cried, okay, up until Sunday morning, I think it was the 27th of July. And what made me cry is they moved us to our grandmother's house, that you would think finally some relief, but it was not relief. My grandma is wonderful, and it was not her, but it was, okay, because my uncle was there, and he had a lot of mental health issues. And I recall my mother getting punched in the face by him, just randomly for no reason, and yet he still got to live there. And her face was all purple and blue, and I was probably only like, you know, between maybe 5 years old or so, 4 years old, and that I recall that happening. And I recall him just always there and acting kind of loony, you know. And I understand, I'm not trying to make fun of people that, you know, have mental health issues. I'm not trying to make fun of him. I'm not saying that, but it's like, it's unsafe, it's unstable, like erratic, and I rage. I recall, you know, finding a street kitty, and we were trying to take care of it, and we took it a bath, and we were giving it food, and then he saw that the cat, and they're like, and all the cousins were like, yeah, and they lived around him their whole lives, because there was a cul-de-sac, and the sisters, the aunts lived, and then in each different home, and then it was my grandmother, and they're like always on eggshells around him, because he'd always be blurting out stuff, and he was also germophobic, so you couldn't touch anything of his, or he'd just throw it away, you know. And it was very difficult to be around him, to go. My happiest place for my childhood was to go visit my grandmother, but it was the scariest place as well. And I recall that he just slammed a kitty on its head, and it froze on the ground, and then it stumbled off, and I was like devastated. I couldn't even believe. I felt like my heart was coming out of my chest, like, what did you just do? And I go and tell the cousins, like, yeah, he does stuff like that. And everyone was just kind of like numb to it, you know. And, you know, I go and I tell my mom, like, yeah, you know, he just doesn't like cats. I'm like, I understand you don't like cats, but why is everybody tiptoeing around this person? Why is everybody allowing this man to take over? Oh yeah, my grandma will always praise him, like, you know, he buys me a radio, he buys me a TV, he buys me what I need. But yet, he doesn't let her have any friends. He didn't let her, you know, he had to touch the stuff, buy the stuff, and purchase stuff, or else anybody touched it, anybody touched that plate, he'd throw the whole thing away. You could hardly visit her in her house. So it wasn't safe. So they took us to another place that they thought was safe, because that grandmother loved us to pieces. But it wasn't safe. So, like, we had to, and that's when I started breaking down crying. Finally letting go, finally healing from those traumatic experiences of being very young and having to live in survival mode. And everybody tiptoeing around the corrupted people that don't heal, you know, and that hinder everybody else's lives with their rotten attitude or with their explosive attitude. And I started to think, like, this is what Yahuwah meant when you had offspring. He still sees the babies, the offspring, like, if they're adults, they're older now, but they're like your babies. He sees the adults like adults, and the babies and the offspring like you didn't swaddle them, you didn't rub them with salt to harden, firm their skin, you didn't, some other thing that he said. And And I was like, that's what he meant. He meant that with the utmost care and like and comfort and protection to things and of family life that is not in his eyes sacramental, like loving kindness with compassion and care. He meant like that, like the utmost protection. So my husband and I are really, really particular, and we just want, he wants to even, you know, we're tired of the public school system, and he feels like homeschooling our children is better. Not even because of the story, but because of what's going on in the world at this time, during end times. But I'm very passionate about raising my kids up into what I can do. And I mean, as in preschool and kindergarten. I do up to kindergarten, and then I have them do public school the rest of the grades. But I feel like that all roots from that. It roots from that. And then the last word, so it was magal, and then it was casi, right? So casi has to do with reflection of Yahuwah in the silvery treasury of Elohim, the Almighty. And so now he's saying is, once you have healed, once you have gone through closing all of those doors of trauma, you know, where it doesn't affect you in that way anymore, where you know, depending on Yahuwah and nobody else, right? My husband heard me cry, and then he came, right? And trying to help me in that moment. But sometimes your own spouse cannot help you other than a hug. They can pray for you, but who's really going to heal you is going to be your real Heavenly Father. Okay? And that's when he was looking at the school to see if it still existed. And he couldn't find it anymore. It's many years ago. But what I didn't like is that this preschool was trying to open this door for all these innocent children. And they were using them in the most sadistic manner of their innocence, stealing the innocence of a child. And so I felt hardship for my husband as well, because he told me he went to go visit El Salvador when he was young, just with his father and my husband's also a twin, so with his twin brother. And he stated that he saw something very horrific. They're at the park, and so many people just carry a machete because over there it's more of like a tropical fields, and then people were coming off of work, and a couple were fighting. And anyways, out of nowhere, as his dad was talking to his friend, not paying attention to what was going on the other side of the park, and they were still standing right next to each other, and the boys were looking the other way. They saw this man all of a sudden grabbing his machete after, you know, arguing with his wife for a good while, very loud, and he just sliced her right in half. I mean, she was still intact. And then he recalls, they're like, "Dad," you know, and then they showed the dad of what happened over there. And the dad and the friend or the uncle ran over there and started beating up the guy and holding him down, so that way the police could get there and arrest him, and then trying to call for medical help for the woman. And these kind of things children shouldn't have to see, you know. But I recall then it was like kind of opening the door to watching horror movies and not being fazed by them, you know, and not feeling anything of it, and almost trying to top off what was actually in the real world scene, trying to top it off to make it so it's a less traumatic. The real thing that happened in your life is less traumatic than the other things that you watch on TV. Have you ever thought about that, of why you're attracted to certain shows? Is it, how did that happen? You know, I think of that sometimes. So what he's saying is, due to healing from this traumatic event, being delivered from things that you should not have experienced, all of the horrific things that you were supposed to be protected by but you weren't, all of the suffering and extra suffering that people put you through, you feel like it was all in vain. And nothing is going to come of it other than just to healing. He's saying no. It is not just going to be the supernatural healing from that trauma of claustrophobia. It's also going to come with riches, with an abundant flow of, well, back in the day, the riches were crops. You know, and so basically it's saying of abundant nourishment, and also fields, and of money, of cash flow, like you're still standing and you're still generous and you were still compassionate, and you did not, even if you did, but maybe let's say you got out, you got into the occult like stuff, but you got out, you got into gang like groups, but you got out, you got into you were violent before, but you changed your ways, you know, or you were traumatized from something that you didn't know you were traumatized about, but now you're not. You're healed, and you changed. You changed to be more like the reflection of Yah, more like the reflection of Yahuwah, and that comes with reward. And the reward is not just in heaven. He's saying that it's here on earth as it is in heaven, so it's here. The reward is on earth as well. So it's worth healing. It's worth, I'm not saying go through memory lane and talk about it. I'm saying go to Yahuwah, who can heal you, so you don't have to, it doesn't affect you in that type of way anymore. You don't have to be, you know, hoarding food. Maybe it's something along the lines where it's not about that traumatic event. It could be something like this. When, let's say you were a child and there was so much lack of everything, even a storybook. You didn't have a book to read when you were a child. So now when you have children and you have your home, you're filling your home with a grip load of toys and books and other kinds of board games, and you're filling your walls. Let's say your walls were blank, and now you're filling up your house with a bunch of stuff, and you're not realizing that none of your kids even appreciate it. They don't really need that. They actually just want a cell phone to look at. But that's another thing. And you're trying to fill a void, in other words. So for people that had claustrophobic, their way they filled the void is by never ever going into a situation where they would have to be enclosed. And that's how they were going to survive. And this is how someone survives, by buying a bunch of stuff and hoarding it and thinking that that will finally make it feel like home and not feel so empty. But that is not the way to heal it. All she's doing is compulsive buying, and then all the person that was dealing with claustrophobia was just avoiding enclosed spaces, and avoiding even at the carnival or like at an amusement park, enclosed space, a ride that was an enclosed space. You know, look back, dig deep, and be like, why don't I want to be locked in this enclosed space, even though it's kind of roomy? Why can't I do that? I should not feel fear. I should not be nervous to do that. Think back why, and then you have to give it to Yahuwah and tell him the truth. Yeah, it was. This is how you do it. You see, it was scary. They didn't protect me. Say the truth. Or if it was, you know, a spouse, that a really bad relationship, he did not protect me. Just say it like that. You're right. I think we keep saying, no, but it was fine. It was fine. Stop saying it was fine. That's more damage. It's not, it was not fine. It was not fine that we were taking care of my grandma's house, the person that we loved the most. It was not fine for a really long time. Okay? So anyway, if you're in a relationship that way, of that nature, where it's violent, and you have children, you need to not stay in that. Not separate, but it's traumatic for them. And then it's just going to uproot later in life. So, let them heal now. And let yourself heal now, and not stay in that relationship. And don't live your entire life being afraid of enclosed spaces. Like I remember Yahuwah giving me a vision of being in a submarine, and I was like, oh, I can't even breathe in here. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. And he's like, you're fine. Breathe. I am here with you. And I really couldn't do it. And I was hoping that I'd never have to go in a submarine ever in my life. I remember at Disneyland, a long time ago, there was a ride that you go into the submarine. I just couldn't go in there. You know? So, anyways, what I'm trying to say is, you don't have to live that way for the rest of your life and just put up with it. Or well, let's say you're driving and you need to cross the bridge to get to the other side of the city. And you're like, I can't do it. I can't cross that bridge. Why can't you cross the bridge? Why do you have to give yourself extreme anxiety? And then you have to do it, and you're shaking and you're sweating, or whatever the case may be. And every single time you're going to put yourself through that. And each time, did you notice that nothing happened? Nothing bad happened. Okay, so these kind of things, we need to be able to drive down that street. I used to not be able to drive down a certain street in the neighborhood, because that's where I had a lot of extremely bad memories with an ex-partner. And we used to go to those shops all the time. And I was just going to leave it that way and let that dictate my life. And be like, I'm just not going to go in that area. And I'll be fine. Why though? Why give Satan that peace? Yahuwah is the one that gives peace. And you know what shalom means? Shalom means to take authority over chaos. That's why you pray shalom. You say shalom, because you're pretty much putting it in the air, and demons can't come close, because you're telling chaos and destruction to get out, to leave. So these words in Hebrew are really powerful. Obviously in any language, but specifically in Hebrew, because each letter also states something very powerful. So proclaim healing Don't say, I'll always be this way. I'll always be afraid of that bridge. I'll always be afraid of the dark or of the closet, etc. Be able to know who stands beside you and is with you, before you, behind you, beside you. And his name is Yahuwah.